everyone. Welcome again to HCI's Rally Call with Eric Andersen from Arch Insurance. We are looking forward to his presentation and the ability to ask questions about insurance needs for group tours. So Eric, once again.
All right, now I'll take it away. Okay, this is the official start of it. So we have had a lot of changes on the insurance, so I kind of want to just go over some of those changes with you. Just kind of really high level, because I find that it's easier. If I give too much at once, it kind of gets overwhelming. So just kind of a high level overview, and then we can answer any questions that you have. And I know you're used to working with supplier coverage, so I also want to go over some of the things that might be different with our plan, which is, supplier coverage. And but is you know that when we first were introduced to Arch and started working with HDI, that we had our non-age rated group, and those have now been discontinued. So we kind of were looking at the new group plan versus the retail plans, and really probably for a majority of you, the retail plans are going to work out really well. And so that's kind of the route that I think we'll probably be going for most of you on your trips. They're very different than what you're probably used to, because it does go by the cost of the trip and the age of the traveler. But on the plus side of that is that it can also be easier to enroll your travelers, because we can provide you with a customized link that you literally can send out to your clients. They can do the quote themselves, enroll, and it's automatically tied back to you. So I know Brecca just did her training, and so I was able to do the customized link for her. So literally now there is a link that ties to Boise, that ties to Brecca, that when she sends that out, and every time someone gets enrolled, they'll get notified that someone enrolled on the program. And then it's automatically logged under HCI. So it makes the process very seamless. But then on the other side, the advantage of it was always that the cost was usually lower. But the hard thing with the group program from our side was that, the group programs, since they were lower cost, and typically when we have groups going, they're usually people that are spending more money, and they tend to be older, or I say more mature travelers. And then they have a higher frequency of claims. So those things together kind of usually overwhelm a non-age rated program. And that's exactly what happened to the group program. After 5 years of trying it out, it just was not working. And so for right now, they just decided to discontinue it. And so we're going with the retail programs. The retail programs will kind of give you a bigger bang for your buck, just because they have really good coverage. It's primary medical. They've added some additional benefits in there, like if there's a travel warning, if you need to leave early due to severe weather coming, if there's a missed connection due to denied boarding. So that's a new thing now too. So, it's not if you test positive for COVID. This would be, you get to the airport, they take your temperature, and they're like, we're not letting you on this flight. So literally just had this happen to clients, and they had to fly out the next day. So that falls under a missed connection benefit now. So there's been some really great benefits that have been added since we last talked. Sorry. Was there anything specific that you would maybe have questions on as far as how to cover your trips? I know, Becky, you've done a trip on our group program before it changed, and now we're switching to the retail. But anything process-wise, or any kind of questions that you may have, or any trips that you have that you were thinking about third-party coverage?
I do.
Yeah.
I have a 4-day mystery trip next year, June 7th through the 10th. And I need to have insurance, to offer insurance for my people. So how would that work?
Yeah, Kathy, it's really simple. Just reach out, just shoot me over an email. What I can do is I'll create you that, I send you, it's called an NCOIL link. After you watch the NCOIL link, we can literally set you up underneath our licenses. And then I send you that custom link back that you can send out to your clients. You can do it one of two ways. You can either send the link to your clients and have them do the travel insurance quote themselves, or I know I was talking with Lisa on this. She also has a group going next year. Her clients typically reach out to her. She can do the quote in the portal herself.
Yes.
And email it directly to the client. They just click buy now, you're done.
Okay,
So it makes
that's
it really
how I
simple.
would want to do it.
Yeah. So, and it would just go by the cost of the trip and the age of the traveler. And it would give them all three options. We have a Pro Plus, and a Cancel Flex. But the Pro Plus is the one that most times tends to give you the biggest bang for your buck. But for domestic trips, they've made some nice changes to the plan. So sometimes that prices out a little bit better for clients. So I usually will send them all three options if all three are available, and then choose.
Hey, Eric, can you do anything to improve your audio?
Yeah, can you not hear me?
You're very sketchy. You're coming in and out quite a bit.
Is that any better?
It's actually breaking. It's not the volume. It's just breaking.
I'm not sure. Should I sign out and try to log back in?
Actually sounds pretty good right now, but it's kind of hit and miss. But for the most part, we can hear you. It's just an occasional it'll drop down a little bit. So just try to speak up more, and I think it'll pick up more consistently.
All right.
Tina,
Yeah, could be.
I noticed that everyone is not muted. I think last time during our conference, if everyone muted themselves, we had a little less problem with that. Let's try that.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Does that sound any better with everybody muted? Oh, okay, good. All right. Well, that was it. All right. That was Amber. You got the bonus for today. So I can go ahead and send out flyers to everyone on the Pro Plus plan and the Pro and the Cancel Flex. The Cancel Flex is our cancel for any reason-ish type of coverage. And I know that when we were on the all teams call, they were talking about how third-party cancel for any reason, it only gives you a partial payment back. And that is true. And, because unlike supplier coverage, we don't have the ability to refund a client and then turn around and resell that cabin or that trip. So you're right, it is a reduced benefit. So if they cancel for a non-covered event on the Cancel Flex program, yes, and I will email all the information. The Cancel Flex, it does give you a partial payment for a non-covered event, and it would still be a full payment if you cancel for a covered event. I worked for a company previous to Arch, and our cancel for any reason coverage paid back 95%. And what we found with a lot of our partners is that when you had to cancel for any reason, anytime there was a little blip in travel, it made it far too easy for people to cancel. So you would spend 6 months planning this trip, there's a blip, everyone cancels, and then your trip just falls apart. Whereas when you have a cancel for any reason that still gives you a good chunk of back, 60% is still a good chunk back. But if they're just having a bad hair day, or if there's a week where something happens in travel and everyone panics, you don't have your whole group fall apart. So it can also work to your advantage. So I get where 100% cancel for any reason is attractive to a lot of people, but for people that are actually designing trips, it can actually be a deterrent sometimes because it makes it far too easy for everything just to fall apart. So just keep that in mind too. Also, if you're offering a supplier coverage, a lot of supplier coverage, the traveling companion can only be the person that's sharing the accommodations with you. And with Arch, if I was traveling with a friend and we were in 2 separate cabins on 2 separate bookings, but we're doing the same itinerary, we're still considered traveling companions. So watch for that in supplier coverage a lot too, is that it's sometimes the coverage only applies to the people that are sharing the accommodations with you, right? We find this all the time in supplier coverage where you have 2 couples that are traveling together, and let's say someone in the fun couple gets sick, and the other couple goes like, we don't want to go anymore. And then they can't cancel because they're not sharing a room. But with Arch, all 4 people would be canceled and could cancel for that. So it's a good benefit. Another thing on the retail programs, I did also want to bring up, because I know it's going to work differently than what you're used to on the group programs. And Ted, you had asked this question before, is that if your group has to cancel due to lack of participation, you know that on the retail programs, unfortunately, we cannot do a premium refund, but what we can do is a 2-year voucher that would hold their premium on basically an Arch gift card for 2 years, so that once they do rebook with you, they would just use that voucher to purchase a new plan. And it's 2 years from the original travel date. So if you had a trip going in, March of 2022, it would give them till March of 2024 to use that voucher. So this way they don't lose their insurance premiums.
Let me ask you a question about that, Eric.
Yeah.
Is that voucher, excuse me, only in the name of the individual, or can it be in the name of the bank so that they can refund the money to the individual and use it on another passenger in the future?
It's actually in the name of the individual, but everything we do, it doesn't even go by who purchases the plan, it goes by who the insured is. So we can only issue a voucher actually to the actual individual insured. Now, in the event of a claim, that can work differently, because for your claims, you might have, let's say the grandparents paid for a family trip for someone. And then what you would do is an assignment of benefits saying that, if one of the kids has to cancel, the payment would go back to the grandparents. And that's kind of a different thing than actually a voucher for your premium. But Tina, is it easiest if I just send you all 3 copies of the flyers and then you can get them out to everyone, or what works best?
Well, if people would like a copy sent to them directly, I think they might want to email you. We have everything on our website already linked, unless it's different than what you had sent me previous. So, and if you have something new, I can update that, but it is available on our website under the Arch Insurance page.
Eric, I think you ought to assume that you should be aggressive on this and send everything off to everybody, not just the people on this call, but to all of our bankers. And just be a good sales guy and keep talking to them, following up and that sort of thing.
And Tina, do you have a list of everyone? Because really the only people I know are the ones that I've actually had contact with. So is there a list of everyone I should be sending out to?
Yeah, I can send you that list separately in an email. And also I'll send you the link then to where the information is on our website, so that if people wanted to check in and grab it from there, they can do that.
Yeah,
easily.
I think, and Kathy, you were saying like you had that 4-day trip. A 4-day trip will work out really well with the retail programs. Sometimes if you're doing a day trip or a 2-day trip, it's not price advantageous. Maybe, I don't know how to say that correctly. They're not designed for like a 1 or 2 day, but once you get into those 4-day trips to a week trip, that's where you can get it. That would be a great fit. Are there any other questions that I can answer as far as the insurance goes?
I have a question.
Yeah, okay.
Explain to me now again, if we promote a trip, say if we promote a trip with Ted and you're doing the insurance and we don't get enough people to do the trip, how does that work?
So on the new programs, then what we would do is we would be able to do a voucher that would hold their insurance premium for 2 years, so that then once they rebooked with you, they would just use the voucher to buy a new plan.
So remind us, how soon does somebody have to purchase the insurance? And can they wait? Can they agree to go on the trip, but then buy the insurance at a certain time closer to the time of departure?
You actually want to buy it closer to your deposit date. We call them the time sensitive benefits. So when you're buying a retail program, you do want to make sure that you're buying on the Pro plan. It's within 14 days of your initial trip deposit. On the Pro Plus, which is the plan that most people use because it's the one that gives you kind of the bigger bang for your buck, you have 21 days to enroll. So it gives you 3 weeks from your deposit to enroll. And that gives you probably the most important thing that people are looking for in that time frame is the pre-existing waiver. And what the pre-existing waiver means is that most plans, a lot of supplier coverage won't even cover for pre-existing medical conditions. We can cover for pre-existing medical conditions as long as they purchase within, on the Pro Plus, 21 days of their initial trip deposit. So what that means is that if I've had a medical change in the last 120 days, if the event that causes me to cancel is related to something that I'm already going through, we can still cover that. So obviously, use my mom as an example. she's 87, so she has a lot of pre-existing medical conditions. And so whenever I travel, whether or not she's going on the trip with me, I always have to make sure I buy my plan within 21 days, because if there should be a change in one of her pre-existing medical conditions, I need to make sure that I can cancel. So it's very, very important that people are actually buying it sooner rather than later. Typically with insurance, what happens is if you wait too long, what happens is people tend not to buy until they're like, uh-oh, this event has happened, and now I think I may have to cancel my trip, and now I'm going to try to buy the insurance, right? That's the exact opposite of how insurance works. If I always tell people, if there's an event that triggers you to come back and buy the insurance after it was already offered and you declined it, it's probably too late for the insurance to help you, right? Because then the event has already happened. It can only help you for unforeseen events. So you do want to get in on the time sensitive benefits. On that Pro Plus, it would also be, the cancel for work reasons. And then under trip cancellation, it's like hijack, quarantine, jury duty, the supplier default, extension of school year, government shutdown due to a natural disaster. All of those are tied to that 21-day waiver period on that Pro Plus. And after people enroll, they do have 14 days to review the program and make sure that it's a good fit for them. So, after they purchase, we send them a confirmation of benefits and then a description of coverage. The description of coverage is the full policy language. So they get a chance to review that. And if they, look through it and they're like, oh, well, we were really buying this because, our dog is 12 years old and we were worried that if our dog passed away, we wanted it to be covered, and that's not a covered event under the plan, they can cancel and get a full premium refund as long as they're within that 14-day free look period. And I always tell people to make sure that you go through the covered event. I mean, it's a long document. No one's going to read the whole thing. Like, I get it, right? I'm in insurance. I don't even like to read it. Probably shouldn't say that on a recording, but it's one of those things where I always tell people, go through and look at the covered events, but then you also want to make sure that you go through and you look at all the exclusions, right? The covered events aren't the things that come back and bite us. It's the exclusions in the policies where it comes back. So when I'm doing a full product training and I'm going through the description of coverage with people, I always make sure to go through all those covered events, but then we always flip to the back and go through those exclusions. People don't think about things like suicide. We can't cover for suicide. If it's a self-inflicted injury, that's not something that we can cover because you're basically causing, it's kind of like if you lit your own house on fire. I know it's a terrible way to phrase it, but that's the best thing that popped into my mind. I'm on a lot of cold medication, so I apologize that that was the best example that I came up with, which is horrible. But you know what I'm saying? So those are the things that you want to, watch for. Are the exclusions.
Eric, I hopped on a few minutes late, and
yeah,
maybe you covered this, I'm not sure, but I think everybody would like to get a full understanding of the whole insurance regarding COVID matters that are going on now.
Yeah, sure.
So if you could go through these examples. Somebody has purchased a trip from one of the banks, and between now and then, they test positive for COVID and they're not allowed to go. Or they are, whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated, if that makes any difference in the insurance.
Yeah, it doesn't.
If they're traveling internationally and they have to test negatively 3 days before they go on the trip, they go on the trip and then they have to test again before they come back into the US, and they test positive. What are the coverages? What aren't the coverages? Yeah. All that sort of stuff.
That's great. That was actually on my list of things to cover as well. So we'll jump into that right now. As far as COVID goes, we treat COVID just like any other medical event. So, COVID test is just the same as if you got the flu. We don't have an exclusion for pandemics or epidemics. So if you test positive prior to your departure, that would be reviewed under trip cancellation just due to medical. So what you'd want to do is reach out to your primary care physician, obviously report that you have the positive test. They're going to advise against cancellation. And then when you submit your claim, your doctor would fill out the attending physician statement stating, when they were notified of the positive test and when they advised you against travel. So COVID for us is just like any other medical. The things that would not be covered related to COVID would be like concern of travel, right? So there's a surge in the area where I'm going, or if there's a government restriction or a border closed. So if a supplier is unable to provide their service, if I book an ABC cruise for November of this year, an ABC cruise line cancels all of their November 2021 trips, really ABC cruise line should be giving me the refund, not the insurance. So, if a supplier cannot provide their service, really they should be giving back either a voucher or a refund on that part. As far as COVID goes, while you're traveling, again, we would treat it just like a regular medical event. There's several things that could come into play. The first one would be obviously medical. You would probably have to, get some kind of medical treatment that would be covered under plan. Then it could also be a possible trip interruption. The biggest thing that we're running into now, Ted, and kind of like what you were saying, is that let's say, per the CDC guidelines, you have to test negative at least 3 days prior to returning. And let's say you test positive while you're on your trip. Trip delay is what covers additional nights at a hotel while you are at your destination. So if you test positive and you're not allowed to return, that's going to be a trip delay claim. And trip delay covers up to $1,000 on the Pro Plus, a maximum of $200 per day per person. So if it was a couple, it'd be up to $400 per day. And then you would each have $1,000. Then we also have a platinum upgrade that's available on the Pro Plus plan, and that allows you to double the amount of trip delay that you have. So it takes it from $1,000 to $2,000. So anyone that's traveling between now and say December, I'm usually not a big, the plans are pretty robust on their own. So I'm usually not a big upgrade person. I'm just not. If there's something very specific, then I'll be like, oh yeah, you need an upgrade for that. Like if they're doing a hazardous sports or something like that. But just in general, I'm not big on having people add the upgrades because, like I said, the plans are very robust on their own. But for now, I'm telling anyone that's traveling, I'm like, take that platinum upgrade, because if I tested positive before coming back to the US, I want to make sure I have a $2,000 bucket for my trip delay instead of just $1,000 bucket for the trip delay. So basically, because some places you just have to wait till you get a negative test. Some places you have to wait 10 days at your destination. So it would be much better to have that additional coverage.
Eric, just to expand for a moment on the $200 a day. So what they're allowed to spend that money on that is coverable is what?
Hotels, meals, and local transportation. And that gives you up to on the end of $1,000 and $2,000 if you have to upgrade.
Breaking up again.
Oh. Can you guys hear me now? Is that better? Maybe I really need to lean into it. Sorry, you have to see my face that close. No one wants to see that.
Let me ask. Let me just ask Kathy and Becky to mute their screen. That might help.
I'm on the phone and it is muted.
Go ahead, Eric. Did Eric freeze on us? Great. Tina, maybe you can get Eric to call back in.
So did I hear right? If the person you're rooming with, if they don't test positive, they can still stay in the hotel and be covered to stay with their person that tested positive for COVID?
That's a good question. I'm not sure he was saying that.
Okay.
Because it's an individual coverage, but there are these benefits when you're together. So I'm not quite sure. We'll have to address that when he calls back.
Because I've had some people ask me that if their husband tests positive and they don't, can they still stay, or do they have to go back home and leave their spouse quarantined?
Sure. Well, they're allowed to stay. The question is whether or not they would get the $200 a day. One is already getting $200, so the roommate would get $200 if it's coverable, and that would give you $400 a day. but I'm just not sure if that's true.
Okay.
But I did want to make sure that everybody was clear on the questions about having to cancel a trip because of border crossings or surges, like Amber's going up to Canada in a month with us. If for some reason the border recloses, that has nothing to do with the Arch insurance program. It's not coverable. It's just what Hospitality Tours is able to give back to the guests because of this border closing.
Ted, I gotta ask. So if that's the case, would that be a situation of, you know, of a reimbursement of, say, like the trip cancellation of what we haven't yet done? Or,
So
you know, say we get, you know, 3 days into it and we had 4 more days left. It does, you know, make me curious. No one's asked me that. But it, you know that that's one of my concerns, and I was going to talk to Eric about that.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the specific question.
If for some reason it was to be, say, the border closed and we had to leave, you know, we could not continue on in our tour in Canada, and they say, get out, we got to go home.
Okay.
What is the scenario with that? Because obviously the trip insurance is not going to do a trip interruption at that point, which would be a reimbursement from the from Arch. What is the scenario in that?
Yeah, it's a good question actually to ask Eric about. I don't know if he was given that example because the trip is being interrupted here. And there are lots of reasons trips get interrupted that are covered and not necessarily medical. It could be trip, you know, flights delayed and that sort of thing. But let's assume that they're not covering it. Then it would be up to the tour operator to make sure that they know, you know, what your policy is with the tour operator. So the policy with Hospitality Tours is that anything that is not used is completely refundable. So if you used 4 days of a 7-day tour, your 3 days is completely refundable. And the oddball here is your airline ticket, because you're going to still need that to get back home again. But then you have to change flights and all that sort of stuff. That's the fun part of our job.
Thank you, though. That does make a little more sense to me, and I appreciate giving you giving me that clarity. Thanks.
Yeah, not all preferred tour operators operate the same way. So I'm not speaking for the other PTOs here. I'm just speaking for hospitality. Anytime hospitality cancels a tour, has to cancel a tour, whether it's because of our decision or because of a problem at the destination, all monies are fully refundable.
Gotcha. And that would be the case, of course, if they decide to change their mind with the border. That's the case. At that point, though, the insurance portion would be given a voucher at that point, or not. I guess that'd be a good question for Eric.
Yeah,
There you are.
Eric on that.
Okay.
Tina, did you try and call Eric back? You're muted. We can't hear you.
Yes, I did call him, got his voicemail, and sent him an invitation so he can hopefully come back in. I'm not sure why it's not, apparently it's not allowing. I'm sure he must be trying desperately to get back on. Just wait one moment and pause the recording.
Eric's back.
I am back. That was the weird. Did you guys hear that? There was like this huge boom outside. Literally lost everything in the house.
Oh
no.
And I was like, that can't be good. So, which would maybe explain, do I sound any better now or no?
Yeah, you sound good.
All right, well, maybe they're working on I don't know what they're doing, but I was just like, okay.
Well, we missed you and welcome back. There's been a lot of talk. That's a question for Eric. So let's get back to asking Eric.
Now my whole mojo is thrown off, but it's okay. All right. So we were talking about COVID and the types of things that were covered, how trip delay covered. So what was the question that came up while I was gone?
So one question was, our trip is interrupted. We're on tour and the border closes while we're in Canada and we're forced to go home early.
Yeah, I would say that's probably not a covered event, only because there's really no policy language in there for government restrictions or any kind of border closure. The plans were never designed for that. So for us to go through and change that, and that's some of the things that you're seeing is that we've had filings in place. And so now we're trying to address all these things. Insurance can't always be super reactionary, just because every time that there's these events that happen, we actually have to file it, and we have to file it with each and every state in order to get it approved and have it into the system. So while we can see where that would be a value, that's something that I'm sure is on our list of things that for future that we would have to keep considering. So right now, really the only thing that can be related or covered related to COVID would be if you actually contracted the virus or tested positive, because then we can actually put it under the medical part of the coverage. That's where that would come into play. So a lot of
I have a question about that. So if your spouse tests positive for COVID and the other one is negative, do they both get to stay together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you
So
would
they
have
get,
to both stay
they
back.
get the full $400 a day.
Correct. So
Okay.
one would be covered for under their own sickness due to trip delay due to sickness. The other would be due to your family member traveling with you or traveling companion having to stay back. Yeah, and that's why right now that platinum upgrade is such a great value, because the cost on that is it's a pretty low cost, and it does give you the additional days, because some places you have to stay for like 10 additional days or something like that. So it's much better to have the $2,000 to cover it.
So Eric, if say that happened and you had to be delayed and waiting for a test result, say, you tested or had the fever, maybe that, and you can't go, you have to go be tested, and it does take 3 days. So the insurance will then give you 3 days of that coverage?
So you're saying you tested positive, now you have to wait for your second test to come back? Is that what you said?
Well, just that it's not a full quarantine. Are you only allowed that certain percentage per day? Then that's how that is paid to you to get you home. Say it's 4 days, you get $800.
I'm not sure I'm 100% following something. So sorry, Amber.
Oh,
So
that's okay.
what's the situation that happened?
Well, just if you were only having to be there for a short time, not the full quarantining.
Oh yeah.
Are
If they
you
allow you
getting
to
a
come back,
portion of that?
yes. So you could get just a portion. So if you only have to be, because some places really until you test negative, they'll let you come back, in 3 days. If you tested negative after 3 days, then they're like, bye, see ya. You don't have to stay for the full 10 days. And the other places would have you stay for like 7 to 10 days, I think it is.
Okay, and also, would that be helpful in getting any reimbursement towards your airline ticket, because you're probably not going to get the group rate to get home? Is that helpful to pay that extra cost for the airline ticket?
And that could possibly be covered under a trip interruption due to sickness. So because any of the benefits that are covered due to a sickness would also apply to if you were tested positive with COVID. So that would be a trip interruption is what covers additional expenses to rejoin your covered trip or to get you back home. The trip delay benefit is strictly just for hotels, meals, and local transportation. So in that particular case, you would have 2 separate claims, one for trip delay, one for trip interruption for the additional cost or the change fee for your ticket.
But that's all within one policy?
Yep, it's all on the same plan. Yeah, so 2 different benefits, same plan.
Eric, you said something that set off an alarm bell. You have one incident with one, in the example we just gave, you have one incident with one person, and you're suggesting they have to file 2 claims. one for trip delay and one for trip interruption, don't they just file one claim and you decide where it lands?
Well, there's two different claim forms, because if you did a trip delay, that's not going to, there's no coverage under a trip delay. So you would actually you would go into the system where there's just two different forms that you would fill out. And you could submit the same information for both, because you're probably just going to upload all your information. But there's
how
two
many
different,
forms are there besides those two?
well, it kind of depends on what happened. I mean,
Well,
there's
that's
claims.
the question.
Yeah,
So
it's
the
claims for.
passenger isn't going to know what form to use. If it was a trip delay or a trip interruption, they don't understand the differences.
Yeah.
So
I can get with claims. I can get with claims, Ted, and find out for you on that.
yeah, it'd be nice if there was a universal form.
Yeah, there's not that they're.
And based on the circumstances, you decide if it's interruption or delay or cancellation or whatever it is.
I also have another question, and if this were to happen, who is it that they would be working directly through? I know in the past, if there's been an insurance made like through TripMate and things, I know it's supposed to go directly through TripMate, but many times I end up being the club director and they're reaching out to me to get that form or to ask or to figure out. Is that something that we can work and still be help them and to also work with Arch Insurance at the same time? Or do they have to be the only ones dealing with this?
No, that's fine. I mean, if you want to submit that information, there's lots of times that I'm going back to our partners and saying, hey, do you have a copy of the form from the supplier that shows when they canceled their trip, or the breakdown of the refunds and things like that. So any additional information you can give the claims, they will gladly take. If there's medical information, that's when they will typically not be able to work with you on it, because due to HIPAA, they can't release any of the medical information. But if it's any of the funding or the refunds or the trip costs and that kind of stuff, yeah, for sure you can help with that.
So I could reach out to you and I have Mr. Smith that isn't sure what he needs to do next or has a question about the medical. We can be very neutral, but I can call and ask that question in order to transfer the information and say that, you need a note from your doctor saying this.
Right.
So we can be the go between, even if it comes down to medical, just to inform our customer.
For sure. And even though, like, if you reached out to me and said, hey, Mr. Smith has to make a medical claim and he has this note from his doctor, claims keeps coming back and saying this, I'm not sure why it's not going through. And I'll be like, oh, that's because the doctor wrote a note. And really it has to be on a very specific form. It's called an attending physician statement. I would email you that attending physician statement and be like, here's the form that you need to send to Mr. Smith to have his doctor complete and kind of get it back on track. So I can see certain notes in there. I just usually can't see any of the like medical, like what happened or what kind of treatments happened, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Can I say something too? So we usually do exactly what Amber does. And one of the things, and we've always done that with any, PTO that we use and their insurance company, whoever they were using. But what I like about Arch Insurance is the way that their policies read. Like for us who are so involved like Amber is, I think Arch's is easier to understand, and we know the breakdown and the different coverage available, and they list the dollar amounts available for each type of policy. So for those that roll like Amber does and like that we do, I think it's going to be help the customer. So there may be more forms to use based on Arch's policies, but the way that they explain it in their policy is going to be easier for us to help the customer, how we're looking at it.
Great, thank you. And yes, and when you are going through the forms and stuff, anytime you have a product question, or if your client comes to you with a question, obviously you want to be answering or making yourself liable for that. Always send that over to me. And usually what I'll do is I'll give you the like the Eric Andersen short and sweet answer, like, hey, this is what it means in English. And then I'll attach a copy of the full policy language and see. But if you look on page 4 and you go to letter F, this is where that language applies, so they can actually see the policy wording. you know, a lot of times when you're dealing with suppliers, they're like, they send you over the policy language and they tell you where to look for the language, but you can read that many different ways. So that's why I always try to give an example of how that policy may or may not work.
I do want to mention, for those of you who don't enjoy the fine print the way Amy does, Amy loves fine print. And I think she's unusual that way. So she finds all this stuff just right. You may not all feel the same way, but Eric is a great advocate for us. So anytime you're going through anything you don't understand, just get a hold of Eric. It's so nice to actually have the rep that you've met, they've been to the conference, they understand us. And as you can tell, he's not afraid to find out answers and write questions down and so on. So definitely use him as much as you can.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I love that. I love him because that actually makes me a better rep too. When the more questions you send to me, I mean, I've been doing this for 21 years and every single day I have to go to underwriting to get clarification. You know what I mean? So don't ever feel like you're out there on your own or like, oh, I should know how to do this, or oh, I think this is how it is. Just come to me. If I know it, I mean, if it's something that I've run into, you know, I'll get right back to you. And there's a lot of times where I'm like, you know what, let me get clarification on this. And especially now, because I mean, it seems like even as we're talking right now, probably something is changing in travel. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's changing that quickly. So it's always good to double check. And I even do that for myself. Sometimes I'll be like, okay, I know what I want to say, but I'm like, let me just check with underwriting to make sure that this is still how this is going to play out, or, you know, in this situation. So it's always good to have, to be able to bounce your ideas off of each other. And, you know, the other thing is, when it comes to insurance, I always try to be as transparent as possible as well. If we're going to be a good fit for your client, I'll be like, oh yeah, this is, you know, right in our sweet spot, you know, like you were saying with the 4-day trip, you know, blah, blah. But if you had come and said, well, this is a 1-day motor coach trip that's $59, I'd probably be like, this probably isn't the plan for you. You know what I mean? So it's part of being a good partner is you step up when you're going to be a good fit, and you take a step back when you're like, you know what, this is not our sweet spot. You know, this is one time when supplier coverage would be better, or this is one time when this would be better. So anyway, take that for what it's worth, I guess.
Eric, I'd like to thank you for helping out and corresponding to the people that I've sent your way. One thing I was starting to say when you first just came back on, that Eric has helped out. I think I've sent 3 different people in the last, say, 6 months that they're looking for individual insurance for trip insurance. And so I've asked if that is something that Eric and Art can do. And sure enough, he says yes. So I do know that you've helped at least one college student whose mother reached out to me, knowing how important insurance was. That's going to be staying for 2 weeks in Africa, I think, and she is using Arch Insurance. So it's funny that you get those questions. Maybe others, you know, other bankers have had those questions, and you know, I sometimes, I know you can do it with TripMate, and I will send people to TripMate. But now I always refer to Eric and say I have this personal, you know, friendship with him, and we understand, you know, that he's able to help individuals, and then they reach out to him, and you've been very helpful. Thank you.
Oh, and thank you so much. I spoke with Mary yesterday,
Okay.
and she booked 3 policies with us. She was so delightful. Yeah, so she was just wonderful, and I think she's going to Ireland next year with her whole family. It was great to connect with her. So thank you for sending her over.
And she is, you know, a long time club traveler, basically, and recently lost her husband. So this is a big deal that we were able to hook her up with you and know that you are taking care of her, because she is, you know, she's a lady who's gone through a lot right now, and I feel confident that you're taking care of her and her family. So thank you. But you know, put that in your pocket, everybody, that you know, you kind of go out and over and above for your people, even when it's not group travel.
Yeah, she literally calls me on my cell now, so that it's hilarious. I love it. I love it. She's awesome.
Sorry about that.
No, she's very good. She's delightful. So
thank you anyway.
Yeah. But I'll go ahead and make sure that we have all the updated flyers for you. I know there's a lot of COVID situations going on, And we also, once you get signed up with the portal, our vice presidents actually did a webinar not too long ago, early July, and that's available in the portal too. So if you're ever need extra information, Amy, like if you get tired of reading and you really just want to watch a video, like you have, you know, a half hour to kill, you can watch our VP's chat about travel insurance. But it's very helpful, and that's in your portal as well. But I think the new links and everything will come in really handy for you and just make it very easy for you to enroll your travelers. Either have them do it, or like you said, that you can use that link, click on it, do the enrollment, send it over to them, and they literally click buy now and you're done. Sorry. I'm holding up better than I thought I would. So,
I'm sorry, all these questions for me.
no, it's good.
Hopefully everybody's, you know, gaining some knowledge. I think you mentioned earlier that it is something the bank club director can do. We can sign up our group and then pay for it that way. Is that the case?
Yeah, so you can either have your clients enroll using their own credit card, or you can enroll them as well. I know when I was talking with Lisa, she was saying her clients usually have her enroll. So she's using her own link and just going in and doing the quote and then doing the enrollment, which is an option that you have as well. So if you want to be more hands-on, you can certainly go ahead and enroll them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then once you do have them enrolled, not only will it send a confirmation to them, but since you're logged in as you, it'll send you a copy of the confirmation as well. And for anyone that wants a personalized link, I can go ahead and send the NCOIL link, and you just need to complete that, and then we would assign it to your specific location.
Eric, and I also want to confirm that in no part of the ARCH programming do you differentiate somebody who is vaccinated from somebody who's unvaccinated.
Correct. We go more so by events than vaccinated or non-vaccinated. So it just has to be an unforeseen event that happens to be in the policy language.
Right. So you don't treat an unvaccinated person and say, well, you should have foreseen this because you didn't get yourself vaccinated. They're still covered just like a vaccinated person would be.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's people that actually can't take the vaccine. So, there's all different situations that probably play into that. So yeah, it would just be the event just has to happen after the effective date of your policy. And that was what someone had asked about, waiting to have people enroll. And that's why it's better to have people enroll closer to their deposit than closer to their final payment, because when you get the additional benefits when you do it closer to your deposit. And then typically if someone waits between their deposit and their final payment, if an event happens, it's too late, because then it's no longer unforeseen.
Would it be helpful for me to show you the HCI site where you can get these links?
Yeah, Tina, I was just thinking to wrap up here, if nobody else has any questions, just share your screen and show them where they can see all the stuff that Eric has.
Okay, great. Oops, I should have left it on. So this is our homepage, and under membership, we have our corporate partners. And we have MPLC, but then over on the right side is the Arch Roam Right Travel Insurance. And scrolling down, we have these 3 retail plans to choose from. Eric, this is still current, correct?
Can you open one up? Let's see.
Pro Plus, and Cancel Flex. So Pro.
Those are I just want to make sure it's yep.
Okay.
Those are the current versions.
Okay. Oops, I'll go to Pro Plus. And then Cancel Flex. So that's how you get to it. If you want to get it directly from Eric, he'll be sending stuff out. You can save it yourself, or you can always hop on the HCI site. When Eric has a new brochure, he'll send it to me and I will get that updated right away. So, and you can always contact Eric directly.
Yes. Just make sure that if you email me that you spell my last name Andersen, S-E-N, because a lot of times people we'll do SON, and they're like, he never responds. I'll be like, I didn't get it. So that's why if I don't respond within like a few minutes, typically I either didn't get it or I am trapped under something heavy and you should call 911.
I also want to mention that all of you are very accustomed to knowing that Tina has the answers to everything. Well, on insurance, don't assume that. Go to Eric. Tina was just going to have to do that also.
I got your back, Tina.
So Eric, if you say I have a trip that we're planning and we need to have all of our trip costs and everything figured out within a month, is that something that easily can be done? Or do we have to consider that the insurance is separate from our tour cost because each individual person might be a little different cost because of their age and what they choose?
Correct. So each person would have a different cost, possibly based on the cost of their trip and the age of the traveler. And you, due to changes in insurance, long as you can no longer build insurance into the trip cost. So you have to have that as a separate line item. Is that what you're asking?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And you're right, because that's exactly what we used to do. We used to tell people years ago when I was with my previous company, the best way to increase your participation is just to build it right into the trip cost. And then there was too many Department of Insurance things where people are like, well, I didn't know that I paid for that and I didn't want it. And so now you always have to have people opt in. When you're doing a trip, you can make insurance mandatory. Say, hey, you know, in order to go on our trip, you have to have insurance. You can say, this is who we use, but you can't build it in. And then say, you know, if you don't choose our supplier, just make sure that you show us proof of insurance. So you can make insurance mandatory, but you can't build it into the trip cost. So if that's, you know, a concern for any of your people.
Yeah, so just yesterday, we revised all of our registration information and our disclaimers. And I don't have it memorized verbatim, but basically we put a note below the price of the tour that said insurance is not included. However, it is required for this tour. We encourage you to shop plans and rates. However, we have, you know, you can get insurance through Arch Insurance through this link, and then told them to ask us for help, basically. So we kind of have that legal verbiage that separates insurance from the cost of the tour, and then we know that they're going to be like, we want you to handle it. So, but we felt like that was the best way to close it, and then we can help them. That's what we did.
That was a rock star answer right there. That was awesome. You're like my new superhero right now. So yeah,
Amy, can you send that to me? Thank you. Or maybe that would be something we could maybe put on the website. I don't know, just an idea. I know many of us might, you know, love to have that verbiage already done for us.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amy.
Amy, if you don't mind, we could use it as an example of a best practice. We can put it right in that Arch link area.
And then for the people, like I said, anyone, the link that I gave to Brecca is, you know, specific to Boise, but for anyone that wants it, we just have to have them do the end coil training. And then we would have a specific link that you would put there that ties it back to your own organization.
And then Brecca just said it was super easy. It was like 5 minutes to go through the training. So super slick.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy video. It's less painful than listening to me ramble with a cold, for sure.
So I didn't catch that training. The training is actually just a video on how to use the link.
The video is actually just for compliance reasons, and what that does is it allows you to operate underneath our licenses. It's kind of like the do's and don'ts. It's a short 5 to 8 minute video about like the do's and don'ts of travel insurance. Like you don't want to represent yourself as a as an insurance agent. You never want to guarantee coverage, things that you're probably already doing, right? And even when you come to me, I never guarantee coverage because it really needs to go through claims because you never know what's going to be in the documentation when it comes in. So I can always give people guidance. You know, I'll say, well, this is how the plan should work. I'm like, but I can't guarantee coverage. You know, sometimes people will be like, I want 100% guarantee that, you know, if this happens, that I get my money back. And, you know, you have to be careful because really early on, I mean, I've been doing this for 21 years. I just remember, and this has haunted me forever. This is with a client I worked with in Kentucky. I may have already told you this story before, but the mother had called in and said her daughter was sick with mono and they were unable to go on their trip. Their natural reaction is, oh my gosh, that's horrible. Don't worry, it's medical, it's covered through the insurance. What the mother didn't tell the travel advisor at that time was that when they booked the trip, the daughter was already sick with mono. So she ended up with an extended case. So when we got the documentation into claims, we're like, she wasn't medically fit to travel at the time of purchase. There was no way for us to cover this. And then she went back to the travel advisor and said, but you said this was medical and it was covered. So, you know, people may not always be trying to mislead you, but they may not also be giving you all the information for you to give, you know, a full answer. So that's why I would say, you know, usually when I respond to you, I'll say something like, I can't guarantee coverage, but this is how, you know, this should play out, you know, with the documentation. And then attach the full policy language. So just always watch that. You never want to make yourself liable. And that's kind of what the video is about. Now that I have you all freaked out, it is a short and sweet video, but it's basically just that you don't want to guarantee coverage like that. So, and sometimes they seem like really slam dunk answers, like, okay, well, yeah, of course this is covered, but it's, you know, something. We had someone that was, this is more written. Now I'm going way off track. I'm so sorry, Ted. Ted's probably gonna give me the eyes like, stop talking. You were doing so good, just stop. But we had a guy that was beheaded on a trip. He was out the top of his party bus. It was a bachelor party, and they went under an underpass, and he was too far out. And so obviously you think that's going to be covered, but I'm like, there's an exclusion in almost every policy for illegal drug use or intoxication. And I'm like, if you're on the top of a party bus and you get your hand, I'm like, there could have been some drinking involved. I'm like, I can't guarantee coverage. So you want to, right? It seems like it'd be literally a slam dunk, like, yes, of course this is covered, but I couldn't say 100% it was covered because I have no idea what led up to the, okay, that was really a horrible example again. I'm going to chalk this one up again to the medication that I'm on right now. So just erase this last part, Tina. Just go back.
I actually, though, these are real scenarios. I'm sure they're not happening on our tours, but
yeah. Hopefully,
you know,
I never run into that one again.
Things you just would never even imagine, and so yeah, that's what insurance is. It's for the unexpected and the unusual, and sometimes, you know, there are exclusions that we just aren't going to be aware of. But I think this has been super helpful. Are there any other questions for Eric before we let him go?
I have one more. I'm so sorry.
That's
But bringing yourself to that, you know, many times we have our group travel that we do within the, you know, that's in our itinerary. That's what's covered. But many times on a river cruise, I like to hop on a bicycle and take off and go, you know, use their bicycle and do my own little excursion. Or if you pay for an excursion that's over and above what is actually on the itinerary, is our insurance covering us anytime we do anything like that?
Yes, so it's going to cover you 24/7, whether it's something you booked with the group or not through the group. The only time it may not cover you would be if it maybe fell under like an extreme sport, like let's say you decided to go off and do bungee cord jumping on your own. Okay, that's going to be, you have to, if you don't have the hazardous upgrade, then that's not going to be a covered event. But if you went off bike riding or horseback riding, or, you know, you were skiing, something like that, those kinds of things would be covered.
So zip lining, bike riding, horseback riding, that's not an extreme sport?
Yep, those are all okay. I think the ones that it's like heli skiing, bungee cord jumping, hand gliding, parasailing. And if you ever watch YouTube parasailing crashes, it's horrifying. So I'm like, now I know why we don't cover them.
Diving, would be extreme.
Yeah, so then we'd have to have the adder for that. Yeah.
So there is a different thing you can add to that, but it is something to look into. I mean, I think that's good to know. You know, I don't think that's the common thing that people do, but what about a helicopter? Is that extreme?
That's fine. Nope, helicopter ride is fine. Yeah, this is heli skiing. This is This is like when you're in the helicopter and you jump out of the helicopter with
Yeah.
skis on and land. I didn't even know that was a thing. It sounds like a horrible idea to me, but I'm not a skier, so I don't know. You know,
That's
it's,
not actually how that works.
is that,
The helicopter actually sets down at the top of a glacier and you get
oh,
out and
thank
you
God.
ski down from there. You don't jump out of the helicopter.
It's so much scarier in my head, Ted. So much scarier in my head.
I know. I've done it and it's beautiful.
Oh
Okay.
my God.
Still not covered. So whatever Ted just said, it's equally as scary, but you're just not jumping out of the but you still have to jump out of the helicopter to get to the top of the thing, don't you?
No, the helicopter lands at the top
Okay, that's much better.
in the snow and you get
Okay.
out, you put your skis on and down you go. But because
Are
it's
you
so,
speaking from experience?
yes. So because you're in an extreme place, that's why it falls under your extreme conditions.
Because
not
you had to get the
because of jumping out
helicopter
of the
there.
helicopter. Right.
Oh my God, I literally thought people were jumping out of helicopters.
Well, they
Yeah.
probably have that too. I don't know what that's called.
That's, yeah. Either,
See,
either of
Eric,
those examples, not good.
you
Yeah.
even learned something today.
Right, I do. See, this is what I'm saying. After 21 years, I'm always learning something new. Oh my gosh. That's literally making me sweat just thinking about jumping out of that helicopter now. Sorry.
Eric, I do have one question for you about, is there actually policies that only cover for medical rather than cancellation? So what I'm saying is, I don't want a cancellation insurance policy. I want to be covered when I'm out of the country for medical reasons only because my own personal insurance isn't going to cover.
Yeah, there is. That's a great question. I'm embarrassed I didn't think to bring that up. But yes, so what you would do is on that same link that you have that we would provide you, under trip cost, you just put in $0. And what that does is that removes the trip cancellation, it removes your trip interruption, and just leaves the medical evacuation, the baggage delay, the trip delay, the missed connection. So basically all your post-departure, and it's really inexpensive. Let me see, I'm kind of blind. So like for myself, that policy, it's on the Pro Plus. That's the Pro, sorry. The Pro Plus plan is, I'm 55, so it's 26 bucks. And that's giving me $50,000 of primary medical, $500,000 of medical evacuation, the trip delay, the baggage delay. We use that when I'm doing a full training. I always call that like my intro to insurance, because some people, it doesn't matter how much you tell them, they're like, we're going no matter what. But you know, a lot of people, like you just said, Doreen, they don't realize once they leave the US that their own medical won't cover. My mom did a missions trip to China, same thing. And I'm like, Mom, you cannot go without insurance. I'm like, they're not going to take your Medicare card. They're just not going to.
Right.
You know? And that was a great low cost option for her. Now the $0, we call it $0 band. It's the same $0 trip cost. It does not cover anything due to pre-existing medical conditions. So you do always want to make sure that people know that. Because to get the pre-existing waiver, you have to not only cover it within the pre-existing, the time-sensitive time frame, but you also have to cover the full trip cost. But it would cover for new events. So like if you did fall and break your leg or something like that, that kind of thing would be covered.
Does that have to be purchased in the same time period that your
No.
other insurance will cancellation?
No, because since there's no pre-ex waiver on that, it's really just the post-departure. You can buy it up until the day before you depart.
Perfect. Very
Yeah.
nice.
And it's super low cost.
Yeah.
Most people want trip cancellation interruption, but like you said, if I was doing a personal trip and I was going to be going overseas and I'm staying with a friend, or I'm using points for my hotel and I'm using miles, and so I really have no trip cost hardly, I would take the $0 band. I even use the $0 band when I go to Montana every year, because you can tell I'm very rugged and outdoor. But I go to Montana every year. I buy it because I got sick there. And you know what? When you go to Montana, there's one hospital in Billings, one. Like you don't get your choice of like, oh, hey, they're out of network. So my out of network, it's like 80-20 or whatever. So I'm like, I always take travel insurance. I'm like, because if I get sick while I'm in Montana, guess what? I'm going to be paying out of pocket at least 20% of that bill. And in a US medical bill, it's a good thing to have a $50,000 limit on there. So.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for the great question. All right. Anything else? This was fun. This was good. Thank you guys. You kind of got me going. I was really like out of my element today just because I've been so sick. So this was actually kind of gave me a little bit of life. So I appreciate it. And now I learned what a heliskiing is.
Thank you very much, Eric. We're very appreciative. Sorry we didn't have more people on the call, but we are recording it, so hopefully they'll be uploading it.
Yeah,
Thank you,
they'll
everybody.
want to watch that beheaded part for sure. So Lordy help me. All right. Thanks everybody. It was so good seeing you.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.